Hi, everyone. Hello. Good to see you. So this is Natalya Goncharova. You see the years of her life. So that's she lived a long life, and yes, she did see it all, the two revolutions, the two wars, and many more. She was born in in Russia, and how well, unfortunately, she left Russia in 1916 together with her husband, and they never went back. So they spent the biggest part of their life far from home. However, they always considered themselves Russian artists, and well, their art was really, it didn't really seem, I would say, Russian art, but there was always, some bits of Russia in everything they did. Okay, so let's do the following. Just give me a second. I would like to make sure that my phone is not going to interfere. I mean, with the Bluetooth. I hope you can hear me okay. Just let me just double check a few things. Okay, yeah, that's great. So Natalya Goncharova, as I said, and her husband, Larionov, Mikhail Larionov, well, they were even born on the same year, but he lived 2 years longer than her. And it looks like they could have actually met each other even earlier, but well, it happened the way it happened. They only met they were then when they were 20. They met in Moscow. However, Larionov was born in Moldova, in Tiraspol, but they both happened to study at one school. It was the Moscow School of Art, Sculpture, and Architecture. He studied at the Fine Arts department, and she studied a sculpture. They met when they were first year students, and actually never parted ever since. And well, it always happens, like in most cases, unfortunately, there's a well, if both partners are artists or actors, unfortunately, very often, there's some case of competition. That was never a case, never. And despite, some issues in the well between them as partners, they well they well throughout their lives, they would be supporting, and actually, I would say they would be even inspiring each other till the last day of their lives, because they kept on creating up until, well, the day they died. That's true. So we have some really rare photographs of them as well, just as children. That's the Moscow Art School where they studied. And you know well, you've heard a lot from me about the Russian Academy of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg. But the more tours I give about the 20th century artists of Russia, the more I mention this art school in Moscow. It's still there, and it is still educational facility. The reason why I talk more and more about, I mention more and more of this school, because we're switching to the 20th century art. And this is the time for experiments, avant-garde, impressionism, post-impressionism, and modernism. And well, the thing is that the Fine Arts Academy in St. Petersburg, it still, try to cling to, I would say, a lot more conservative and, like, say classic art. But this Moscow art school was different, and this became kind of the cradle of the avant-garde in Russian art. So that's why we will be actually mentioning it more and more, because I'm planning some more tours on avant-garde. And well, these names definitely uh, would ring a bell to you. Well, just Malevich is one of them. So this is going to be, well, we're going to be talking a lot about Moscow. So Moscow at that time was the hub of, experimental art. And Natalia Goncharova actually was from a noble family. However, Larionov was just from, I would say, even, her parents actually referred to him as a simpleton, and they didn't really approve her choice. And they actually, well, prohibited, any, well, dating him. So she actually had to leave home, and they started renting an apartment together. When they, well, as I said, she studied sculpture and he was artist. And the moment, well, when he saw her art, he realized that actually she was going kind of the wrong way with sculpture. And he told her, your eyes are tuned, or set for fine arts, for canvases, not sculpture. Like, open your eyes, on your eyes. I'm trying to quote it as close as possible to the original saying. That's what it was. That was actually they had a big row, and he left for 3 days. And instead of really, like, looking for him, searching around, and actually they skipped, some days in the art school. 3 days later, well, she didn't look for him. She stayed in the apartment, and she started actually painting. And 3 days later, he came back, and he saw beautiful artworks by Goncharova, and he said, okay, well, now it's time to go and, arrange the exhibition for you. And um this might really, well, be kind of, you may seem that that's kind of some kind of a joke, but actually on that their first exhibition, it was exhibition of the two of them, Mikhail Larionov and Natalya Goncharova, but there was definitely a focus on Goncharova's works. By that time, Mikhail Larionov was already had some reputation of uh I would say, well, avant-garde artist that's never really stopped experimenting, and every of his exhibition would be very different from the previous one. At that exhibition, he brought more than 50 uh, paintings of a shed from Tiraspol, where he was from. That's because he was inspired by, Claude Monet's dozens of, depictions of a church in different light. So he came up with something very similar. um and, well, I would say it definitely caused some tensions, and that did, gave way to some rumors and dissatisfaction from the administration of the art school, and actually he was expelled. But he, well, I would say he wasn't really shocked or discouraged by that. Plus, Goncharova carried on with her studies in the Moscow Art School. So for him, it was always most important to have her covered, and well, which is again, the two artists. Normally they would, compete for, for attention, but with Larionov and Goncharova, it wasn't really the case. So what happened? It was summertime. So what? Well, he decided to go back to Moldova just for summertime, and Goncharova stayed in Moscow. Um, well, they didn't split up, no, but they just said that, summertime is like, hunting season for artists, and when you go hunting, you want your prey to be your prey, but when you're done, you'll meet each other in the end of summer, and you show what you have caught, what you have created. So that's what happened, but they terribly missed each other. Larionov would be painting, just whatever he saw around him. He lived in a rural area in Moldova, in Tiraspol, and he painted lots of animals, and he experimented. Well, here you can see there's definitely something from, I would say, bits of Georges Seurat with his pointillism. He experimented a lot because he had very good teachers in his Moscow art school, and he actually had the talent. He knew how to paint in every style. He knew very well, just the history of painting. But he realized that belonging to this or that movement was boring, and it basically, well, just, when artist is happy and found what he was looking for, he stops really he stops self-development and self-improvement. So he would always be switching styles. And if, like, he started with the, I would say, quite impressionistic, style, and then a bit of post-impressionism, but more of what very well, I would say very quickly he would switch to something a lot different, and he carried on portraying Goncharova for sure. So then, so basically, it would go on like this up until 1905. And by that time, Larionov was already, well, he already had a reputation, and he carried on, exhibiting his artworks. And Goncharova was there at exhibitions, but she was, I would say, kind of gaining momentum, on her way, I would say. And Diaghilev contacted, well, the famous, entrepreneur, the founder of Ballet Russe, Russian ballet seasons, well, very well from my numerous tours and even without them. And he invited Larionov to help him arrange his exhibition. Diaghilev, I also mentioned it on my tours, that Diaghilev, even before actually launching the ballet seasons, he was involved in popularization of modern Russian, contemporary Russian artists, and also contemporary European art. He was the one who would be bringing up contemporary European art to Russia, to St. Petersburg. And nobody did that before him. So he was, I would say, he brought this whole new world to Russian artists, and it was the first opportunity for Russian artists to be known abroad as well. So Larionov gladly accepted that invitation, but he also asked, well, it wasn't like a condition, but he asked, for Goncharova, well, to accompany him, and Diaghilev said okay, and well, actually, they would never really sever because I would say that it kind of really felt as if it was kind of a family. Well, nothing dodgy, but it was probably one of the most productive, prolific cooperations and partnerships in of that period. When they were in Europe, well, Larionov by that time had been quite educated in what was happening in the world, but well, he realized that by that time impressionism and well, such as Monet that he liked so much, was already kind of far behind, and post-impressionism and modernism was really picking up. And he managed to visit the big exhibition of Gauguin, and he realized immediately that was exactly the new step that he was getting ready for. And and as I said, he never stopped experimenting. So his next artworks would be quite different. And yes, lots of sights of Paris, lots of people, and Goncharova would be always next to him. She would always be inspiring him, and actually, well, later on, well, so very soon we will start exploring Goncharova's art, but you will see that their art had lots of similar features, but it didn't look like um, copying, right, or plagiarism. No, definitely not. But they were, I would say, like it's like two for one. So the two artists, very well different with some similarities, but really independent. But they felt at their best when they created together. And the experiments of Larionov and the dozens of artwork that he brought from that first visit to Paris, actually, the Moscow Art Society highly praised it, and Tretyakov Gallery purchased a couple of artworks from Larionov, and this is when the family of Natalya Goncharova said, "Okay, you can move in. And they actually gave them 3-bedroom apartment in the house that the family owned, the Goncharova's family owned. The house is still there in Moscow, in Trochprudny Lane, in the very heart of Moscow. I remember that house very well. And uh, well, that was really one of the first, I would say, not the first acknowledgement, but well, when Tretyakov Gallery, the best gallery, purchases your artworks, that kind of, it means something. So it meant a lot for Goncharova's family. So Natalya Goncharova, let's just talk a little bit about her background, and well, now that from then on we'll be focusing more on her and their art together. So she was from a noble family, and she actually was related to another Natalia Goncharova back in the 19th century. Well, this is the Natalia Goncharova, who was wife to Alexander Pushkin, well, Russian poet number one of the 19th century. However, these two women were very different. You can see this is her self-portrait from the left. Very different, and she was very independent, and she they were actually the opposites. And even though she was from the nobility, she would always well, she would, I would say, always concentrate on, well, in her art, on, common people. And this is already the whole of Natalia Goncharova and Larionov in the Russian Museum. And we see the well, her artworks about peasant women. And well, first of all, you can clearly see the resemblance, right? So they definitely might, you know, resemble some artworks, such as Gauguin, for example, because Goncharova was there. She was in Paris, and she was impressed. She was really impressed by the Gauguin's works, and we can see this bright colors, the contrasts, the, well, I would say the really the steps to well, primitivism, but in that, I would say, in a good sense of the word. And also with the Goncharova, so she was depicting women, but you see these lines, many people find it a bit, well, no, okay, a bit off-putting, like this is not the beautiful women, like, for example, Zinaida Serebrякova, the one that we talked about last time. The recording is on my YouTube channel. Beautiful artist with beautiful artworks and very difficult life. And then we see Natalia Goncharova. She always, well, both of these ladies depicted peasant women in a very different manner. This one, just the lines. So this is what they also picked from Impressionism and early post-Impressionism, that just lines, the way you draw the lines, how thick they are, how angled they are or smooth they are, and just colors. These are the two most effective instruments in actually conveying, certain things. And from then on, she would move forward, and she would be just painting lots of naked bodies. And well, this is when it was her turn to get all the backlash. She was it was like by that time it was already 1910s. Well, she indeed, well, at that time it was not still, the revolution, so that was still quite conservative Russian Empire. In, I would say, after the revolution, things changed a lot, and this type of art would be just fine for some time, for some period, not all the time. But she was, well, many times she was scapegoated, and well, she was attacked by many reviewers, saying that her artworks were pornography, and it was even worse than what they studied on anatomy classes, that type of thing. But she was okay because she used it as publicity, because everybody all of a sudden, wanted to see what the artworks were about. There were lots of caricatures by the fellow artists who just gladly joined that criticism, and but she used that PR in her favor. Absolutely. And she just carried on experimenting, and she switched to, as you see, definitely uh she definitely saw the works by Picasso, and she also incorporated that. But both Larionov and Goncharova, they did not copy what they saw, and they just embraced everything they saw, and they would add a bit of, I would say, of their own vision. I would say not just a bit, they would add their own vision and transform it into their art. Larionov, and this I would say probably one of my favorite works by Larionov. I'm not a big fan of both of these artists, but I understand the value. So Larionov eventually, from even post-impressionism, switched to primitivism, but a very special kind of primitivism. You know, his artwork started to resemble, the shop signboards, two-dimensional, very simple lines, very bright colors, and without any, I would say, without the necessity to actually read between the lines. And this is the hairdresser. This is one of the most expensive. I mean, again, Sotheby's also sold several artworks by Larionov, and this was one of the most expensive bids. I don't remember the exact year, so both Larionov and Goncharova would be sold well in the 2000s, or also a bit earlier, like 1990s. And again, the why it did look like signboards? Well, because they were inspired by Pirosmani, the famous Georgian artist Nicole Pirosmani, right? The one who I talked about him a lot. So he actually, what he did for a living, he did paint the signboards, for different shops, for different taverns called dukhans in Tbilisi, and that what really made his art absolute sensation, not just in Georgian scale, no, on the top level. So we know that the Louvre did his exhibition in the 1960s, and Larionov carried on, in that direction, and he started creating something like that. I mean, it's definitely, I would say, um it's avant-garde, so don't expect it to be conventional. We don't expect it to be, well, we just basically have to treat it with no expectations. So who am I to tell you this? So, and in the Russian Museum collection, there is this artwork. It's 1912. It's called Autumn, A Happy Autumn. And this was the portrait of Natalya Goncharova. Well, allegedly Natalya Goncharova. Some art critics actually claim that actually it was not the Goncharova, but at that time, because he was expelled from the art school, he had to serve in the army. But eventually he managed to graduate, so he went back, he studied for another year, and then he didn't have to serve in the army full time, so he had some free time. And well, he just painted officers, painted soldiers, painted people he saw when he was in different camps. And this is the absolutely, I would say, moderated um, um, primitivism. But from primitivism, he switched to something else, and he actually invented the new, I would say, movement in art, and Goncharova inspired him for it. This was called, he gave a name to it, Rayonism. And there is a term now. So because, well, and this goes, I would say, really hand in hand with what was happening in the world. The discoveries in optics that gave lots of freedom, and also understanding for the artists of those days. That was postmodernism was about. Sorry, post-impressionism was about in general. They tried to employ the advancement of technologies, especially when it got to visual arts. So basically the idea was that everything we saw, it wasn't just it would be objects, but the light reflections, refractions, and basically, so every object would be reflecting the light. So what we say is actually the rays of light. And from then on, so I would say like 1910s, 1912s, it would be just the rays of light. It could be people, depicted with lots of rays of light. It could be animals, it could be peacocks, penguins, and that was the next stage. And then it would be just rays of light, and you could be looking for something in those rays of light, such as you could find some people there, you can find some animals. You mean, well, it's avant-garde, so it could be anything and nothing. So that was a bit of the I would say evolution and or revolution of Larionov. And Goncharova was every step in the way, and she would always say that she was she was independent artist. And a little bit later she even, I would say, stepped a little bit forward, but she would always refer to Larionov, that the way the artist that she became, it was all thanks to Larionov. She wouldn't have existed as the artist, as the painter, without Larionov. In 1913, they both they worked on the theory of Rayonism. So it's called Luchism in Russian. So Rayonism, ray of light. And well they he well then they would step forward again, and they were just very good PR managers for themselves. They made the next step, and they uh started calling themselves the colored ones, or the painted ones, because they started painting their faces, and they kind of issued a manifesto of that women had to be wearing more paint, and paint their faces, paint their breasts, instead of wearing clothing. And this manifesto was released. And then they also had a bit of a march in the center of Moscow, where people would be just, it would have different paint designs on their faces. This is actually this is from the newspaper. And they just marched like that in the downtown of Moscow. So people saw it, and then they saw the publications in newspapers, and people will be talking about it. And then just a few days after that, there was an exhibition of the artists that belonged to the community. Cock door, or the golden or the sorry, not the cock door, sorry, the jack of diamonds. And also there would be another exhibition that was called the donkey tail. So it was all experimental art. In the jack of diamonds, they basically painted each other's faces. Women, there would be several volunteer women that just would take off the top of their clothing, and their breasts would be painted, like body art. Basically it was some sort of body art, but I would say concentrated on certain parts of the body, not the entire body. And that was a scandal that everybody discussed and everybody wanted to see, right? And with the donkey tail, it's interesting because, and we're going to have a Q&A shortly. And with the donkey tail, what they did, there is a Picasso nowadays there is a pig that's that is given brush and paint, and this pig actually paints, it's kind of a pig artist, Picasso. So they actually had a donkey. They would attach a brush to the donkey tail, and donkey would be painting something with a brush on the paper. So they had that. Well, nowadays we kind of find it cute, but back then it was considered a big no-no. So again, there's another backlash. Another, there were even trials. So anyway, she was cleared of all charges. It was all good, but well, she had already quite a reputation, and then she all of a sudden released a series of artworks on religious topics, but then, well, something like that. So they never stopped experimenting, and the next stage would be everythingism. It's not a term, everythingism. The term is in French to sound a bit less awkward. It's called toutism, from a Russian word "tout." Well, like c'est tout, right? That's it. So the toutism or everythingism, and basically they just declare that they pick any anything from everything, and they make it something new from it. So here you see the cubism, you see primitivism, you see you see a little bit of the way the colors were arranged, a bit of Gauguin, Picasso for sure. So that was that was the momentum. So that was around 1915. And I just found some, some artworks. Well, this is also from the collection of the Russian Museum. This is like 1915, the cyclist. It does look like a maybe like a big banner, like an ad of a bike shop or something, but no, it was just an artwork. So here you can actually feel the velocity when you ride a bike at a high speed. Words, numbers, everything you see, it kind of gets mixed up, and that's exactly what she depicted here. um yes. Well, like here we can see the manhole cover, some letters, probably some bits of some shop signboards, and you cannot even see the cyclist himself because he's moving fast, so it's all really blurred. And well, we can see that. So that's the avant-garde. That's in the Russian Museum, in the hall. The hall of Goncharova and Larionov is very small. There's like really, I think there were like maybe 12 paintings altogether. But this exhibition is actually, they rotate the exhibits because Russian Museum has quite a number of artworks by Goncharova and Larionov. So that's well, their artworks are shown. It's not just, I would say, the stagnant exhibition. So some more women paintings. So when they eventually moved to well, it's not eventually, well, at that point they actually didn't know that they would be leaving Russia for good. In 1915 they were invited by Diaghilev, and actually hired by Diaghilev again, and they participated in set decorations, in costume designs for the well, for the performances. And also they traveled a lot around Europe. And this is when Goncharova fell in love with Spain, and also with Spanish women. And she, I mean, not literally fell in love. I mean, she was fascinated by the colors, by the clothing, by the faces of these women. And she, for about a decade, she would be painting a lot of Spanish women. There's like a whole series of artworks called Spanish women. This is one of the works. And for well but along with that, they worked in other styles, and they will always. So this artwork, for example, it was created already in Europe, but you can clearly say this is something Russian. Well, this is the Russian priest. He's wearing the traditional Orthodox vestment. So, but it was already painted in, well, okay, in already modernism style, two-dimensional, very different lines, and it doesn't look like the church settings, right? So this was already the experiments in everything, with everything. This work, or well, these ones, right? What is it? And lots of just peasant life. Well, this even looks like a caricature. However, it was not a caricature, but and so at one at the same time they worked on very different on very different artworks, and they were actually very prolific. In 1 year, Goncharova, well, altogether, Goncharova created about 400 something artworks in just a year. So, and and Larionov as well. Well, it's interesting that when in Europe they actually would also go even further, especially Larionov. We will get to that. Um, and sometimes, especially when it gets to their European period, so this early, well, okay, 1950, starting from 1915, they many artworks actually, well, both of Larionov and Goncharova. Well, sometimes you actually would think that they just launched the series together, and they would be just creating very similar artworks, and it sometimes would be very difficult to say whether it's Larionov or Goncharova. And so when they came to Paris in 1915, they actually they thought they would just go for about a year. So they would just travel, earn money, and just would create, and then they would go back. Well, at the beginning, the plan actually, was working really nicely. So they created the set decorations and designs for Coq d'Or, the golden rooster, and this is the most Russian of the Russian performances by Diaghilev, and that was a great success. Obviously, so Europe was amazed and absolutely in love with whatever Diaghilev would offer. So all of a sudden, Goncharova found herself in the center of attention. There was, there were interviews, there were lots of gatherings, and where the entire beau monde of Paris was just, looking for any opportunity to actually, meet them. That was, those were really good times. And well, they earned enough money, but they when the time came for next ballets, Larionov was asked to design the dresses, the costumes. It was a ballet, and he designed the costumes so that the artists actually the dancers didn't really know how to move in those costumes. And you know what actually Diaghilev and Larionov did? Here is Larionov with Goncharova and one of the ballet dancers. He actually started teaching and instructing those ballet dancers how to dance. And from then on, the design of costumes and choreography would go hand in hand, and Larionov would participate in the work, in choreography. This sounds weird, and like, it's how was it even possible? But Diaghilev was totally okay with it. There are lots of photographs that I share, like, of them working together, both in Europe and even before Europe. So there's just many photographs of them too. And well, how can it be even more Russian, right? And how it can be even more avant-garde at that time. It was well, that was it. That was stand innovations, and well, they worked Diaghilev worked with Goncharova, and well, actually he later on would be working even more with Goncharova than Larionov. So in the beginning Larionov was definitely ahead, but well, later on it would be mostly Goncharova, but it was never any competition between the two, never. And well, that was genuine, and that probably was the secret to their um well, happy, not still marriage, even not, it's kind of a to their civil partnership. Well, these are there's more of the Spanish women. Like, had I not told you about the story about the fascination of Goncharova with Spanish women, you would probably think that these are, I'm not sure, nuns or something. No, these are Spanish women, but this is, the avant-garde art, very different. Well, this is Goncharova in a big studio. They had big studio. Well, they had enough funds, and um, actually, I didn't tell you that, but when they were in Moscow, I just remembered, it was quite interesting. When they were in Moscow, so for one of those exhibitions, very, I would say, experimental exhibitions, there was a released kind of a, kind of a report in a newspaper that, well, the artist Goncharova is about to launch her exhibition, and she started in Europe, and she was a student of Picasso, you know which was wrong. There was, some lies. I'm not even going to go into details. It was false. But in a year from that. So in 1914, there was one of those most scandalous exhibitions, and then the next year they found themselves in Paris, and well, the story has it that, well, Picasso and Diaghilev, we talked about it so many times. And if you missed the tours on Picasso, in October I will be doing tours on Impressionist and both Impressionist collection in the general staff building of the Hermitage. So you're welcome to join those tours. So Picasso did see works by Goncharova, and well, Diaghilev mentioned that Picasso was inspired by Goncharova, so that looked like a premonition kind of thing. Well, it was a bad thing to lie, but these artists, they could do whatever they wanted. So yes, they had many friends. They had fame. They had recognition in Europe, and so they actually in 1916 they thought, well, they actually wanted to go back, but well, things were changing very quickly, and well, so eventually they decided not to. So they stayed in Paris. They mm, they moved in a small apartment. Well, they didn't roll in it, but well, I told you that Larionov would be spending more and more time, focusing on ballet and also on ballerinas. At first, she was jealous, but then she just thought, she could also indulge in some flirtations, and well, they started dating with Arrest Rosenfeld. He was from a well-off French Jewish family with, well, obviously with Russian roots. Well, but they mm, had been living in Europe for several years by that, and they had connections in Europe. And well, it was just, well, kind of a infatuation, but they remained friends for, well, for the entire life. But it's interesting because well, at some point, Arrest Rosenfeld would move in the same apartment. And then Larionov hired an assistant, Alexandra Tamilina, who, well, she was an art historian, and she was from a noble family, and yeah, she also, well, she ran away from Russia, just, well, almost around the revolution. And she was basically, he hired her to translate his artworks, his literary works, and just, well, any correspondence into French. But they also starting dating each other, and she moved in the apartment just downstairs. And Goncharova was really bad at cooking, so Tamilina was very good at it, and Larionov liked, good food. So that's how they lived. Basically, they lived, four of them together, in one and the same building. And then they would go, traveling, the four of them. And they seem to have found that happy middle. So they were avant-garde, even in their just, love life. But they, well, despite, kind of kind of polygamy, they were always exceptionally loyal to each other as artists, and they never stopped creating art together. And they couldn't even imagine working separately. That's how it worked. That never really affected the creative process. Amazing. I'm really amazed by it. There actually there was a So when the Second World War started, well, when the Nazis occupied Paris, Arrest Rosenfeld was sent to a concentration camp, but, well, he was just about to be sent to concentration camp. He was already in one of the transition camps, but Goncharova, thanks to her connections, and she did have connections by then, she managed to she found the documents from Russia, like early 20th century documents, stating that the uncle of Rosenfeld had a very high position in the government, in I'm not sure, I don't remember which city, somewhere in central Russia, and there was no way a Jew could have taken that position. So she managed to prove that he was not Jewish, and he was released. So they remained friends till, well, till the end. Friend, I'm not even sure, like, if it's, well, okay, partners in crime. I'm not sure what to call this, and we're not judging, right? So, but that's just how it worked. And but they, even at that point, they were not married. Only like in 1943, uh in no in 1942, they also applied for French citizenship. Before that, they remained the Russian citizens, and that was a big problem. They were basically, they risked being taken to prison and whatnot. So they got the French citizenship, and later on in 1950s, they married each other. Only at that point. Why? Not because they all of a sudden decided to, I'm not sure, to be loyal just to one another. No, it was not because of that. They didn't have any children, and they actually had amassed great art collection at home, and their artworks were valued throughout that time. So they, well, again, they didn't roll in it, but they were comfortably off, and they preferred to invest their money into artworks, not just, buying things. So they lived in that very small apartment their entire life, um, and they didn't know, well, what to do with the artwork. So they got married, so that one would legitimately bequeath the, well, all the artworks, all the, legacy and heritage, after the one of them dies. And Goncharova died 2 years before Larionov, Well, this is Tamilina and Goncharova, the three of them traveling. And I assume, well, this is Rosenfeld, this is Larionov and Tamilina. So they traveled, the four of them. So just some more photographs to show. So Larionov married Tamilina. So Tamilina would get the double last name, would be Tamilina Larionova, and she inherited all the entire art collection of Goncharova and Larionov, their artworks, and well, all the artworks. By the way, this photo was taken in Paris. You remember this artwork? It's in the collection of the Russian Museum. Actually, there are several versions of it, but so one of them in the collection of the Russian Museum. So Tamilina became this. Well, she was the sole owner of all these works, and well, she waited and waited and waited for the Soviet regime to fail, but the well, in the 1970s, she managed to transfer everything to Russia, to Tretьяков Gallery and to the Russian Museum. And this is how the Tretьяков Gallery got most of the artworks. There were so many of them that eventually Tretьяков Gallery had to build an extension, more halls to actually showcase the works by Larionov and Goncharova, and Russian Museum got the rest. There are many artworks in the collection, but there's only just one hall. Just some last photographs of Goncharova and Larionov. There were some really hard times when Larionov was paralyzed for about 7 years, but Goncharova never ceased, helping him, finding doctors, earning money for the two of them. So that definitely affected their, financial situation. But in general, so they never stopped creating. So this the two of them in I think this is like the end of 1950s. So that's their apartment. So all these artworks, everything. This is Goncharova creating in 1960, 1961. So that's pretty much it. And as you, oh yeah, just this is where I think this is a good way to wrap this up. Okay, so this is it. I will see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining. Thank you for supporting me. So I'll see you in Tbilisi. Bye bye, everyone. Thank you.